after one last excellent presentation from Laurent de Groof and Stefan Heremans of GfK on online insights and cross-media optimization.
Thank you. One of the advantages to be before lunch is that the room is a bit more intimate. Let me start with the competition first. There is the World Cup coming on in Brazil in a few months' time. I heard from a Dutch colleague that they invented the stock market. I will say you, I'm Belgium, I will say you what we invented. We invented second screen. How did we invent it and how did I discover it? It is about 5 years ago, I think, that I was watching reality TV in Belgium, and the reality TV program was doing one thing. They knock on doors and they just go in and they see how people live. And they came into a very old home with a very old couple sitting over there. They were sitting each in their own coach, hand in hand, but there was one strange thing. They both had a headset on, and if you look to the TVs, there were two of these big, very old TVs with still the whole back thing on it, but up on top of each other, and the husband was watching football, and the wife was watching her soap. And that's actually the first time that I saw, hey, second screen. People do in the same room something different or do at the same time two things together. And that's already 5 years ago. And it brings me to what GfK is actually doing, and I will explain later on how we do it, but there are a few needs in the market. And the first thing is, with all these new devices that people have, people consume media in a complete different way than a whole time ago. That means that people could be watching TV shows, doing the app of the TV show, seeing a commercial on TV, and directly typing in, finding the product, and maybe wanted to buy the product. And it's really important that we get to know this. Up till now, all of these media are measured separately, and the goal is to measure them single source via one panel. And it's important to understand how that happens, because we know our own behavior, but the question is, what is the other crowd doing over there? And you also have to compare crowds. It's not only about the Netherlands or Germany, you also have to look into other countries. It happened to be that last week I was in Korea, meeting one of the big electronic producers over there, so you all know there are two options, which one I was visiting. And he said, yes, Stefan, you have to explain me something. There is something very strange. We looked into the TV behavior of the Germans, and a lot of these people, they say that they are sitting single in the living room, and they're watching their own device, and they're watching alone. Can you explain this? Because as a Korean, I can't get this. Yeah, there's one simple answer. In Germany, 44% of the households are single living households. And so if you're copying your behavior of what you see in Korea to Europe and trying to invent products over there, be sure that you don't make these silly mistakes at the start. And that's what we are trying to do with this media reach, trying to find out how do people behave on different media at the same time or cross-media. A second need in the market that we see, everybody is sitting on big data. What is the problem of big data? It goes very deep, but it does not go broad. That means in a loyalty card database of a retailer, I can really see a lot. I can perfectly see things. But don't ask me something else about these people in a loyalty card database. And that's where data federation is coming in, and where do you want to get the right pieces out of each database, connect them with each other, and give the right image or the right overview that the client needs at that moment. A last trend, I think it was about 10 years ago. One of the first things, I was working for a consumer panel within GfK. An analysis which you can easily do is match our database with the matching of a loyalty card database. Let's say you have a family created around your brand, and you're doing direct marketing via this family, and you try to find out what the effect is. That's something that we did 10 years ago. It's quite easy. You do matching of the addresses, and then you see what the effect is. What happened in that meeting is that that company started with direct marketing, and I showed the effect, and the direct marketing guy, a big cross on his budget. And the TV guy sitting next to him said, yes, budget again in my direction. Now what this is all doing, what is asked today, is that we cannot only measure, for example, direct marketing, which was an easy job 10 years ago, but we really know the exact effect, what is the effect of a TV campaign, what is the effect of a TV campaign combined with online, and what if I also do something on mobile. And these are three needs that we see in the market, and they are all three interesting in itself. But the answer really comes if you start combining these three trends. And that's what we do with what we call the GFK cross-media link. What is the backbone of it is actually a panel on which we measure passively a lot of media. That means passively TV is measured, passively online is measured. That means that we exactly know what people do online, how they go to apps, how they do search and so on. There are other media that we do via survey naturally, because like newspapers, that's quite stable, you can do via survey. But so on this media panel, single source, we try to measure all media. And then it becomes very interesting because you can look at the consumer journey, not only what they did online, but also what they saw on other media. And I give you an example. There are a lot of advertisers here in the room, and the online retailers, they sell advertising to you. And they say that it's much more lucrative because people come on an online retailer, they're searching for a product. If your product advertising is there, that's perfect. Then you really have to question yourself, is that the way that people buy online? Do they really type in, I'm looking for a smart TV, and then click on the ads? Or did they see an ad for a certain smart TV already on TV, and directly typed in the name and the brand and the product that they need online? That means that all of this advertising that you did on the online retailer actually does not pay back. And that are things that are already only via this tool we bring into the picture. But we want to go a step further. That's the basis. We are then going to link this with other data, which could be this other data, our own consumer panels. That means for every fast mover in the room where we have these panels, we can see what exactly the sales uplift is. Thanks to your cross-media campaign. Was the uplift for your brand better if you reach somebody via TV plus online plus radio? Or did the cross-media thing did not have any effect? But not only our own data, digital transaction data, meaning that we get transactions in from clients or transactions in via another way that we get to see what people buy somewhere. We combine it with our panel and we can start measuring what effects are. Loyalty card data, I already explained how you could be doing that. But also the other way around. There is always one thing by building these panels or by having big data, everything needs to be calibrated. Sometimes clients come in and they say, I have a huge database. It's millions of people. But the question is, do these millions of people really represent the population? And what conclusions can you make? The same counts for us. We build our panels as representative as possible, but we don't get always all gritty, small details out of the panel, which means that by data projection and putting data sources together, we are creating at that moment a calibration for our data or calibration for data of our customers. Think, for example, of network-centric data, where we help mobile providers how that they can use their data in another way. And naturally, this data also goes to agency plannings, where they at the strategic level can see which media should we combine for a certain target group. Is this a future? Partly. Not completely, because for each bucket that I have put on there, we have several examples. Now, what is GFK going to do with this? And Laurent, after all, afterwards will show you an example what you can get out of it. GFK already has audience measurement panels in a lot of countries. We have consumer panels in a lot of countries. We measure mobile in a lot of countries. What we are now going to do is to put these panels together and start panels where we can do that. And just to give you an overview, we already have this service for a longer time in 3 countries, being Germany, the Netherlands, and Poland. At the moment, we are really getting the global scope of it because we have the experience and we now can accelerate. And so there are already a few countries on the line up for this year. There is a second wave coming, which is simply depending on the investors that want to go with us into this route and really want to get to know what you can do with cross-media. Out of this panel, you really can get a lot. I could show you, based on what we did already in the Netherlands, in Germany. A lot of examples what you do with it. I'm not going to sell here what we all can do. I'm just going to give the floor to Laurent that will give you one specific example, and that gives you a bit of taste what do you do in the end with this kind of service.
Thank you, Stefan. Okay, we operated the media, the single source media panel, what was Stefan talking about, since 2010. And we have some cases. And in this case, we compared the Google AdWords and a print campaign for an online travel agent, one of the bigger, huge campaign consisting of online AdWords and advertising news ads. There were no TV campaign, etc. So only AdWords and newspaper ads. And you have to think about around 3 to 5 million that they spent on a yearly basis. So how did we measure it? Shortly also explained by Stefan, but we have to measure the purchase, and we measure the purchase by linking it to the consumer database, to the client databases. So what we did here, it was a cross campaign. Cross is the travel agent. We merged the data from them to our panel. So we had the purchase, so we knew exactly which of our respondents did buy or did book a travel holiday. So that's one part. And the other part is the newspapers. We measure that via a questionnaire. That's the basic what is done in the market. We measure the ad contacts by asking the people what titles do they read and how frequently they read the newspapers. Online, of course, we cannot measure with a questionnaire. We need to use some software for that because it's very diverse. What do we measure? We already saw some other presentation also measuring online behavior. We measure URLs, search keywords. That's not a new, but what we also measure is, for example, sponsored results. So the AdWords, the SEA campaigns, we see what people see them, and we also see if they click on them. And the other things we also measure, videos and pre-rolls, we tag them, but we can measure that in the media efficiency panel. So if we look at this case, the way it makes it unique is that we normally, when you look at a media campaign, you have to consider, especially in online, the last cookie counts. And normally when you calculate the ROE, it is mostly counted based on the last cookie. And the other point is that SEA is shown on people that have a higher engagement. So people who orientate, there you see the SEA advertisement. In newspaper you don't see it. So we split the sample in people who did orientate, so where also the SEA is shown, and for the newspapers we said, well, then we take this total sample because it is also exposed to the total population. And then we just see, well, okay, we have people who had an AdWords contact, we had people who had an AdWords contact and a print ad contact, we had people who had only a newspaper contact, and we had, of course, people who had none. So let's see some results. Would somebody like to have a guess what had the most impact, SEA or newspapers? Because I was quite surprised when I saw the results. Well, I thought SEA would have the biggest impact, and well, in first instance, yes, that's true. If we compare it with the non-media contact, we put that on 100, we index that on 100, then we see that newspaper ads have an index of almost 110, so we see an uplift in purchase probability of 10%. And if we look at Google AdWords, then we see an uplift of 13%. So more than the people who were not exposed. So if we corrected for the orientation, for the engagement. If not, then it would have seen like this. But there is another thing that matters, because now we have seen what the impact is, but of course there was the media spent on newspapers and on Google AdWords. And then if you're going to look at the cost, and you calculate that on a GRP basis, then you see that Google AdWords was 5 times, almost 6 times as expensive than newspapers. And if we take that in account, or we take also in account that newspapers have a higher reach, they also had a far more higher contact frequency, we come to the following results, and then we measure the return on investment. It's measured on a short-term period, so it's not long-term, but short-term. And then we see for every euro that was spent on newspapers, it had a turnover of 180%, so you get back €1.80. And on AdWords, you get your money back, but it doesn't accelerate, it doesn't generate additional sales. Of course, this is short-term. This is 4 months we calculated, but for us quite remarkable, and for the customer also quite remarkable. So this is the case. Yeah, we are the. So here we have the takeaways. So we are developing a global media link to measure all media effects. Search engine advertising we see as very effective to get in contact with very engaged people, because they already are searching for a specific product, or in this case holidays. But if you look at SEA, you also have to count, and this is a case, it's a travel case. You should look at for each product level to see how effective it is, and look at what the engagement effect is in your study. So those are the results of the study. Those are our contact data, and we have no time left.
No, unfortunately not. Right, I don't want to keep you from lunch. That was a very interesting study. It's good to get some actual numbers and ROI behind the figures for once. If any of you, do any of you have an urgent burning question to share? Otherwise, of course, you'll be around to chat after the thing. Thank you very much for... Thank you, Laurent and Stefan, for that presentation, and thank you all for attending this session. And I hope you enjoy your lunch and the rest of the conference.